Hello and welcome to a small business guide to sales strategies. I'm Cec Busby, the editor of Kochie's Business Builders, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this special masterclass today, coming to you live from International Towers at Barangaroo. But before we dive into the world of small business sales, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And I pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who join us today. Joining me in the hot seat is renowned sales and marketing expert Andrew Griffiths. Andrew is officially Australia's best-selling business author, and he's written something like 14 business books, and they're all aimed at helping businesses do business better. His latest effort is Someone Has to Be the Most Expensive, Why Not Make It You?, which I think is a great strategy, and I'm really keen to hear more about it. So Andrew, welcome.
Thank you, Cec. Great to be here and great to be talking about sales in small business. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I think it's something that is a really hot topic at the moment. So many businesses doing it tough, want to know how to increase those sales, how to get more customers in. So excellent topic for today.
Perfect.
Anyway, your most recent book, it advocates for being the most expensive option. So can you explain a little bit around this strategy? How can small businesses implement it effectively? Because I know businesses often go the other way. They go, oh, I'm going to compete by being the cheapest. Now, that's not always the best idea, right?
Well, you know, being the cheapest is not really a strategy in my view, but you're right. It's an easy path, isn't it? You know, if we say, well, we're going to win customers on price because that's the only tool that we've got in our kind of, you know, in our chest is to be able to say, well, price will win. But it's a short-term strategy. And the problem is once you sell yourself as cheap, it's very hard to put your prices up, etc. The overall problem though, really, with being cheap or having that as your strategy, for lack of a better term, is that you don't really build a strong business. You don't really build a resilient business. And that's one of the biggest issues. And that's why I actually wrote this book, is because I encounter many small businesses, and even if they were fully booked, they would barely make a profit simply because they're just not charging enough for what it is that they do. And I would see people, and this is over 20, 25 years, Cec, who are fantastic at what they do. They're great accountants, or they're great surveyors, or they're great restaurateurs, or whatever it is. But they charge so little for a range of reasons that they're always working themselves to death. You know, the minute there's a hiccup in the business, there's no fat, there's no surplus. The business is not financially resilient. We saw that during COVID. How many businesses went bust overnight in the first month of COVID simply because there's no financial resilience in there? So my whole premise around the book is it's a bit of a sliding scale. You've got being the most expensive, which I think is a great thing to aspire to, or being the cheapest. And if you draw a line between the two of those, it's a matter of where are you on that sliding scale. And the objective is really to be charging what you're worth. And most people undercharge. I talk at conferences. I was at a conference in Sydney on the weekend, 220 people. I asked, how many of you feel like you charge what you're worth? 3 people put up their hand.
Oh.
Now, this was a room full of conveyancers. Now, I asked that question for every audience that I go to in the last 18 months, 2 years, and it's the same response. 3 to 4% of people say they feel that they charge what they're worth. So we really do have a pricing problem. I get though, that's also a bit of a challenge when we've also got a rising costs and cost of living challenge and all of the rest of it. So we've got a bit of a perfect storm kind of happening.
So then how can businesses determine the right sort of pricing strategy so that they're not overvaluing or undervaluing their product or their service?
Sure. I think there's a few things we've got to do. First of all, we've got to go, well, what is my pricing strategy? So for some people, it's, yes, I'm going to be the cheapest because I've got nothing else. So I'm going to undercut everyone else and that will buy me business. As we said, terrible strategy. The next kind of strategy is, how much do you reckon they can pay? You know, like that's, like I think they can pay X amount of dollars. That's what we're going to charge. The next strategy is, well, my competitors, there's 2 of them, I'm going to be right in the middle. You know, so we draw those. The problem is none of those are particularly scientific, yet most businesses, if you're really honest, are probably one of those 3 strategies. And the key is, what you've really got to do is you've got to know your customers. You've got to know how much it costs you to do business. You've got to know how much, you know, your pen costs. You've got to know your operating costs. You've got to have enough information to say, I need to be able to sell, I've got to make $2 on that pen to kind of break even. What do I want to do from a profit point of view? So we've got to be more strategic about it to say, well, okay, I work really hard. I want to make sure that I charge accordingly. Where do I want to be on that sliding scale? Well, I want to be where I'm making 50% markup or 100% markup or whatever it might be. So we do it in a more, to me, a more calculated way rather than I just charge what I think they can afford. You know, so if we can do that, I think we end up with a better pricing model.
So is there an ideal markup in your opinion?
Not really, not really. It again, it depends on where you want to be on that sliding scale. If you want to be the most expensive and you can deliver, because that's the catch point. Someone's going to be the most expensive, it may as well be you, but if you're going to be the most expensive, you've got to be the best. So if you're going to be the best and you are going to charge $15 for a croissant, it's got to be awesome, right? You've got to be able to deliver on that side of things there. So there really, for me, there isn't a, you should be making that markup, that percentage-wise. Now, some accountants might disagree with that, but I think that the reality is what's more important is you've got to actually know what it costs you to run your business, what it costs you to have a product. And we've also then got to know one step further, which of our products and services are the most profitable. Because I worked with a web developer and they sold really high-end, kind of like $45,000 to $50,000 web developments, and they sold another package which was $995, a automated website development platform, 5 pages. You kind of, you know, templated, you go in there and fill in the info. I was coaching them, and the realization that came out of it was they made more money out of the $995 product than they made out of the $50,000 product, simply because that needed more people, that took more time, that had more stuff that could go wrong, that was difficult. But they liked doing those projects, but they were risky. $995, they made $500 profit per site. Just rinse and repeat, keep doing those. You know, if they did 100 of those a week that were fully automated, the owners could live and work in the Bahamas for the rest of their life.
Yeah, so in their case, they didn't need to be the most expensive product. It wasn't their most expensive product that was going to be the best option for them.
Exactly, that's right. And that's a great example of that. Again, understanding your market, understanding your business, understanding your numbers, and understanding your customers.
So if we have decided, actually, that's a great idea, Andrew, I want to be the most expensive, how do I then communicate to my clients, my customers, you know, that I am a valuable option and that they are getting value for money, and that's why I'm so expensive?
And that's a really good question as well. I use a saying that you can't just put lipstick on a wombat. And the bottom line to that is you can't just kind of, you know, I don't know, just put lipstick on and then start charging 3 times what your average rate is. We've got to change a few things when we start to change our business, and when we start to reposition our pricing. Most of the stuff we've got to change is actually in our head, because your pushback will more than likely come from your staff more than anyone else. So if you've got, not everyone, you know, people are comfortable with a lower price product. It's easier to sell, lower expectations. When you start moving to a higher end, for some people that's harder for them with their own poverty mentalities and all kinds of things happening. So we've got to understand, the first thing we've got to do is make a plan and say, well, excuse me, we want to start charging more for what it is we do. We've got to make some changes. And it's probably going to be things like, well, maybe we need to rebrand our business, reposition ourselves. You know, maybe I moved my business. I had a marketing company in a cheap part of town where no one wanted to pay. I moved it to the most expensive part of town and increased my rates by 300%, changed the name. We've got to make sure that our, you know, our materials, our collateral, our website, if we're going to be the most expensive, that stuff has to look so credible. It has to be the best. Everything we do. We've got to look at our product offering, our service, our experience, and say, how do we make that even better? If you're dealing with a business that's the best, odds on they have a great experience. That's what they do really well. But one of the biggest things that we've got to do is we've got to tell a new story. We've got to tell the new story of our business. And the most expensive businesses generally have great stories. They're very good at showcasing their value in their stories. They kind of rewrite it. They don't do transactional stories. They don't do transactional websites. There's more to it. The last part about it is we've got to be really good at showcasing how we bring value. And I think that all too often we think of value and we think of our product or our service. Whereas I believe we show great value in areas apart from that, in our expertise, in our experience, in our credibility, in the energy that we bring to working with people, all of these different areas. And so there's this whole general, if we're going to be the most expensive, we've got to be the best. And that means being the best in brand, in story, in experience, in, all of that, to what you wear in your business, to how it looks, all of those kind of things. So it's quite a process. It's not something you do on a Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock and go, well, we're going to be the most expensive now. But the rewards for doing it are extraordinary.
Yeah, it was quite interesting, some of the things that you just said in terms of shifting that conversation away from the price and being more about the value and the storytelling. So what would be an example of a great story for a business?
So I was in Japan a little while back, and I was doing a study tour with a client of mine, and we met a CEO of a company there, and they run 400 restaurants throughout Japan. It's an amazing business, and he was telling me that they reached a real crossroad a few years back, and that crossroad was where all of their customers were putting them under pressure to sell their products, their food, cheaper and faster. Everyone wanted now, and cheap. This was a 200-year-old company. And they said, well, we have to make the decision. Do we become a fast food business? Are we a McDonald's now? And they pushed back and they said, you know what? No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. We're going to go the harder route. And so we're going to tell a better story. And so what they did in all of their restaurants, they trained their staff, they got in-store materials, and they told the story of their business. And they told the story of one particular element. They have all their own farms and they grow all their own soya beans, and they make this one dish, which is their tofu dish. And they told the story of that tofu dish. 8 generations of soybean farmers. These are our own plants, all the rest of it, And they ran through this incredible story. And the bottom line of that story was that if you want the best tofu in the world served to you and the best meal, come to us. But it's going to take a little bit longer to make it, and it's going to cost you a little bit more. If you want it faster and quicker, please go somewhere else. So they changed that message on their website everywhere. In 1 year, that one dish that they were promoting, sales increased by $30 million.
Wow.
30% total revenue of those 400 restaurants, which was a couple of $100 million increase in sales, because they completely changed the way their customers thought. And when they did surveys, now their customers were willing to wait and to pay more for everything. That's the power of storytelling when it comes to selling. Tell a better story that's more in alignment with the business you're becoming, not the business you are.
So for a small business, would that start with their kind of founder journey?
Absolutely. If you go to 20 different accountant websites, I'm pretty sure they're going to tell you exactly the same thing. They're going to say, we do tax.
Yeah.
And none of us knew that they do tax, right? It's like you go to 20 lawyers' sites. What are they going to tell you? We do law. Yeah. You go to 20 mortgage brokers. We lend money. We underestimate our customers. 20 hotels will be a room of a bed, and a table and an empty restaurant and an empty pool probably. We go to great lengths to tell everyone how we're exactly the same as our competitors.
Yeah.
This is an old marketing 101 thing, right? We've been talking about this for forever. But the stories are the differentiators. I don't want to know that you do tax. I know that you've got a speciality. I want to know why you do tax.
Yeah.
I want to know the story, the founder's story. I want to know the people's story. I want to know your COVID story. Tell me how you evolved and adapted during COVID. Tell me about your customers. Tell me. And I think those stories, if we do them really well, your community story, tell me about what you do in your community so I can then kind of determine, are our values aligned? You know, there's wonderful elements there. And it's really interesting, this, because we think of sales as some kind of secret woo-woo thing that happens and you've got to have special salesy training done under the cover of darkness. Most of it is about being a great communicator and being brave enough to tell a different story or to be different to your competitors. Yeah. That's it. 90% of it, in my opinion.
Yeah. Just going back to something that you'd said earlier about when you're changing your prices and you're moving to that model where you're becoming more expensive, that some of the key objectors are often your staff, your sales staff, because it's easy to sell something cheap. How then do you get your staff on board and make them realise that selling value rather than price is a better strategy?
Again, it's a great question, because that is one of the barriers, without a doubt. And I see that, and I work with businesses where I coach them through changing their prices. And generally, there's a couple of staff members who don't believe it'll work, and you know, they're bringing their stuff to the table, really, is what it is. The key is you've really got to show what's in it for them. And you know, that's the fundamental of any of that kind of stuff. But the reality of that is also there's a lot in it for them. You know, if you change your business, the first thing that happens when you put your prices up is you lose customers, okay? But you lose the ones you need to lose. The ones you shouldn't actually be working with. You've either inherited them, you can't get rid of them, they're the cheaper ones, they're the most demanding ones, they're the problematic ones, the most headaches.
Yeah.
And so your staff go, what if we lost those people? What if we position ourselves as being the best at what we do? Imagine what that would look like for us. So you got to look at them and be able to say, well, okay, that appeals to those who there's a bit of ego. We want to be the best. There are those that are worried about their job security. Okay, what this change lets us do, it lets our business be more resilient and financially stronger. And that is better for you, because ultimately it means I can pay you more. Ultimately, it means if we go through a rough patch, we've got more money in reserve. We're making a better business. This is actually a more responsible move than being the cheapest. We go broke the minute there's a hiccup, you know, in there. So you've got to kind of figure out what are their triggers and talk and bring them along. You know, bring them along. Look, you know, we're going to lose a few customers. We're going to have a dip, but ultimately we're going to be in a better place. You also have to be prepared to lose some of them, because you know some of them won't be able to make the transition. It's simple as that.
Yeah, so you said some of those customers will drop off, and they're probably the ones you don't want anyway.
Always the ones you don't want.
But how do you identify what your ideal customer is then?
Well, what you'll notice is that your ideal customers will start to, they appear. Most of us would already really know. They're the ones that walk in, you know, they buy. There's not a price negotiation. You're not in Bali, you know, like they pay, they respect you, you know, all of that kind of stuff, you know, whereas the others, we know who they are. When I say to a room full of people, you're going to lose those clients that you need to lose, would that be good? Everyone goes, oh yeah, that'd be great. You know, we understand that difference. So there's a bit of a process of natural elimination. You actually make it more appealing and more viable for people that are the right clients to work with you, and you differentiate by price. And that's become more and more now that people are prepared to pay for quality. We understand that. You do get what you pay for. So that natural process of elimination is not a bad thing.
So once you've identified those ideal customers, should you be getting some feedback from them? Like, can they help you, you know, in terms of maybe developing new products or whatever?
Absolutely.
Should you be constantly listening to them?
Absolutely. And I mean, just as an example in the way that I operate with my things, I don't develop a product or write a book or you know, come up with anything just because I think it's a good idea. Typically the way that I will do it, I'll reach out to my community, my customers, and I go, hey, I'm thinking about doing a 4-day retreat on increasing your prices. You know, what do you think? If I get 50 or 100 people go, great idea, would love to do something like that, fantastic. Okay, then I'll go and start doing a little bit of work on it. Okay, I'm thinking it's going to look like this. Back out to the group. What do you think? So I'm not making it and then trying to sell it.
Yeah.
So I'm making it in collaboration with my customers. And that's a really to me, that's the only way to develop products these days. I think that we all too often make something and then we try and find someone to buy it. For me, I have zero risk in what I develop because they've already told me whether they want it or not. If I got no response from that initial shout out, I won't spend another minute on it. I won't waste any time. And you know, I've seen people developing online programs and doing all this kind of stuff or whatever it might be, only to find out they haven't actually got a market for it because people didn't want it.
Yeah.
You know, so
they didn't have that feedback loop.
They didn't have the feedback loop. You know, so and I'm cautious about one person feedback as well. You know, sometimes we can have that one person say, well, you should do this or you should do that. For me, I want to have more. I want to have group feedback. I want to have more market research that gives me enough of an idea to do that, because you ask two people and they might both say different things. So you develop that on that. So you want to have a bit more information.
Yeah, you don't just want the loudest voice in the room.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So in terms of, that's great for attracting, your ideal customers, attracting new customers. What about retention, customer retention? Because that's obviously massively important.
Huge.
And some of your biggest sales opportunities are with your existing customers. So how can businesses leverage that?
Great. And again, you know, it's such an important part. And you know what, interestingly enough, I think there are issues around retention these days as well, because I think that it's easy to have a bit of distance between our customers because of technology. Ironically, you know, most of us are doing business online in one shape or another. It's very different when you've got people walking into your business and you've got face-to-face connection and all the rest of it. So what I used to see in businesses was that as they grew bigger, the business owner had less to do with the day-to-day interaction with customers, and that's when the business started to struggle more, because the business owners stopped getting that feedback, stopped having that engagement. You know, people like to talk to the owner of a business. They like to engage with the owner of a business. So if you've got a business where people come to you, don't look at your time serving people being front of house as a waste. It's hugely valuable. I think the overall kind of concept though is, the retention side of it is, we've got to treat our customers with absolute and utter respect. You know, first and foremost, if you treat them as cows to be milked, which is how a lot of the time we feel when we're customers, or it's purely transactional, I think that it's, again, you're a transaction. And when someone else will come along and offer something shinier, brighter, cheaper, they'll buy it. So we've got to be looking at ways of building that relationship. We've got to be making sure that we're providing extra value. We've got to be making sure that we're solving problems, whether that be through content, whether that be through value adding. You know, you're one of my customers, we give you this. Sometimes it's as simple as a little act. There's a little Italian restaurant just across the road from my place in Hobart called Da Angelo's. And it's across the road, so it's basically my kitchen. But we go there, we take groups of people there, we do it all the time. So the Angelo, strangely enough, that owns it, the first thing he does when we sit down, he gives us a bruschetta. It's free, it's just he does that to say thank you. And it's such a little thing. I mean, you know, we might have a bill of $500 and all the rest of it, but he does that little thing that you just go, that makes you feel valued. And at the end of the night, he then offers everyone a limoncello liqueur thing at the time. And again, little things, but it makes you feel special. We've got to find that limoncello thing. We've got to find that that bruschetta thing. You know, when we can, in bricks and mortar. I stayed at a motel a while back in Rockhampton, I think it was. Came out in the morning, middle of nowhere, and they clean my windscreen on my car. They clean all the windscreens of the cars and put a little note under the windscreen wiper saying, "We took the liberty of cleaning your windscreen so the road ahead is safe. We want to see you again." You know, and little things are very much enshrined in customers. So if you're shipping things, a little note, a little gift, a little thank you, even, when you're emailing, even if there's an online experience, doing what we can to make that online experience even more extraordinary. Like, when was the last time you bought something from Amazon and you got a thank you page with a message from Jeff Bezos saying, "Hey, thanks, really appreciate you buying that book." Now, I don't know why not. To me, we could do that kind of thing. So build the relationship, build the rapport, and I think that's how we keep people coming back. You've got to treat them with respect and make them feel special, because they are.
So obviously a lot of small businesses are brick and mortar, but so many are also online now as well. So is it easier to do that kind of value when it's an online business?
I actually think it's a bit harder, to be honest. I think it's easy because if I'm really critical, I think service in many bricks and mortar businesses is actually not that good. And there's a lot of missed opportunity in terms of doing things that are quite extraordinary for that engagement. Online, you've got less of a concrete touch point. But I've got to say that one of the things that you can do online to really help keep customers coming back is just to make the sales process online actually work and make it easy. We've all been online. You know that whole situation when it's really complicated. Like you've really got to work hard to buy this. You've got to fill that in, goes to that next page, then it drops out. You've got to start again. It's got to put in your credit card. Then, some websites just really make it difficult to buy. The number one thing has got to be, it's just got to be so easy for people to give you their money.
Yeah. That's, to make it a very simple pathway to purchase.
Simple and appreciative, and actually nice language as well. Make it more inclusive. And I mean, someone's written whatever the language is that's on there. Why not make it nicer language? Why not make it more personal, more engaging? But I definitely do think that we can make that process better by a little bit more personalization, simplification. We all have those sites that we buy from, and it's really 1, 2, 3, you've bought it. It's easy, you'll buy from them. It's still a transaction. They can certainly do stuff better, but we're going to buy from them simply because the sales process is easy. You've got to kind of start there. I think if you make it hard, people will go elsewhere.
And so you've already captured their data, so is there also an element of follow-up? Should you be like,
Sure.
Thanks for your purchase, or, hey, we saw you bought this. This might be something great for you to think about later.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think done well, that's really great too. I actually think it's a great service if we do that really well. Hey, you bought this, but again, I think that it could be done better. I think that there are sites that you go, that's kind of really cool.
And others you go, you're just trying to sell me another thing.
I know, it's like that. I've become a tragic fly fisherman now that I've become gentrified and live in Tasmania. And I buy fly fishing gear. And when you buy like if this is a pen and it's $2, if it's a fly fishing pen, it's $5, right? and it's the same pen. And so it's very hilarious how that's the way it works. But I bought some stuff online and I noticed that I actually started getting emails saying, hey, you got these boots, you got that fly rod. Hey, what you need now is this, the missing part of the set. And I'm kind of going, oh my God, I do need that. Like it was like, how did they know? And it's like, okay, I better buy that. So I bought that. It's going, well, obviously you're getting ready to go fly fishing now. Well, you need a directory. Well, of course I need a directory. It was very clever. And it just continues on. I have to keep buying whatever it is because it's so logical that I can't actually say no. And so, well, yes, I think I do obviously need that. Like, I'm just giving the keys to the house. It'll be cheaper in the long run than just keeping up with my fly fishing addiction. So learn from those sites that do it well. Yeah. Like look at who you buy from on a regular basis and go, why do I buy from them? Like I buy a lot from Amazon because it's easy. Of all the book buying places online, to be brutally honest, it's one click and I bought it. Now that's easy. Yet if I go to another bookseller, it'll be 3, 4, 5. I've got to put that in. Sometimes it doesn't work. Then it tells me afterwards that they're not in stock. It's like, we've got to be quite smart about how we're doing our online and make it a much better experience.
So you kind of touched on that upselling and cross-selling then, but are there any other sales strategies that small businesses should be aware of right now?
For in terms of strategies, I think that there's there's a concept called an ascending transaction model, to just use a little bit of technical kind of terminology. And that is a little bit like the fly fishing model, strangely enough. It's where we're able to really determine that if a person buys that we need to know what the next product is in the sequence. So rather than turning around and going, well, I have a one purchase kind of relationship, I think as business owners, it's better if we're looking at your lifetime. You know, I want you as a customer, Cec, and I want you to start there. You buy my book, but then I want you to do one of my workshops or do coaching or whatever it is. We got to know what that transaction looks like. What is the model? It's like if you're shopping at Aesop and you buy shampoo, well, odds on it's a pretty good chance you're going to want to buy conditioning. Then you probably want to buy shower wash or body wash. Then you probably buy dog wash. Then you, I don't know, whatever else is, kid wash, whatever else kind of flows in there. So looking at what we're selling as a strategy of the longer term, what is it, the bigger picture of what we're trying to sell in terms of product or service, as opposed to just one kind of item. The other thing is too, I think that right at the moment in the world that we live in, there's this incredible capacity and willingness for people, and a demand, to be honest, for new. We want new. We want to see new products. We want to see new services, new ways of doing business. And if you're not coming up with new, then you're actually old. And that's a challenge. If we're not adapting and evolving on a regular basis with our product offering, how we sell it, how we price it, how we package it, how we do everything, to be really honest, then we can really become a little bit less relevant for those businesses that are kind of constantly adapting and evolving. So that's, to me, makes that whole having a bigger product range, so you're moving into, but also constantly adapt and evolve with new products and services is definitely a part of our strategy, not just for products and services, but how we do what we do. Should you have a subscription model for your business? Can you offer Afterpay? Because people want to use Afterpay now in your, in your workshop model, or we have to be adapting and evolving, and sales is no different, to any other part of our business.
So, I buy your book, I go to the workshop, I do all of the things I'm advancing through, but how do you sell that to me without appearing pushy?
Well, I'm not a pushy salesman. I don't really like that approach. To be honest, I tend to use a bit more of what I would call like a subtle selling technique, and for me, throughout my book, I'll talk about coaching clients. When I coach a client to put up their prices, or when I was presenting at a conference in New York, I covered this, and this. I'm giving more details in my description, in my story, but that's a form of subtle selling, where all of a sudden the client goes, oh, or the reader of the book goes, oh, this guy does coaching.
Yeah.
My book, people read it and ring me up and say, I want to do a 12-month coaching program, or we want you to come and speak at our event. I think that we can tell better stories, to go back to that initial kind of conversation, where we can talk about our products and services in a way that's not icky, that's not, desperate, that's not needy, that's not, buy my products, buy. None of us really like that. For me, the extent of my kind of sales is really that. I don't get you to join a funnel. I don't get you to do this. I don't do all of those kind of things, because I think my customers are adults and they'll know what they want, but I've got to make sure I educate them about my product offering. And this is a really interesting point, because I think that sometimes in small business, we make an assumption that everyone knows what we sell, right? But often they don't, because we're so across what we do in our business. I've got to ask the question of everyone: do your customers really know what you sell? And I think we've got to ask that. I encounter so many businesses, when I ask them that question, they go, well, probably not. Well, how are you going to sell stuff if your customers don't know what it is you actually sell? And that comes back to education, that comes back to storytelling, that comes back to a website, all of those elements that seem somehow obvious, yet again, it's really often overlooked. Not only what we sell, but why is ours different to the guys up the road or the other website or whatever it might be?
Are there some strategies that work better during a challenging economic time? When we don't want to compete on price, we want to compete a different way.
I think that challenging times, excuse me, the tail end of a lurgy. I think that like times that are challenging, excuse me, Cec.
That's all right.
There's also greater urgency. You know, like the things that we want to buy are often, like I use my business. When it comes to tougher times, I sell more books in tough times. You know, that's an indicator that people want to take action. I do more coaching because people, you know, they want to take action. There's more of that, but there's less speaking because there's fewer conferences because everyone's cutting back. I think this is again, when times are getting a little bit tougher, we've got to make sure that we're deeply connected with our customers so we do know what are their issues or concerns, so that we can then quickly adapt our products and services accordingly. And this is a bigger part of our overall sales strategy again, where it's all about, this is not a set and forget approach to selling anymore. That just does not work. You know, we've got to be constantly connected and engaged. You know, like at the beginning of COVID, for example, what's happening? What are your challenges? I'm concerned about this. Okay, we've got to make new products. We've got to make new services. How much cash have you got in the bank? What have you know, react quickly. Even now, you know, my view is now's the time to kind of get ready for that. We've got to be predicting what do people want, you know, talking to our clients, make sure that we're offering the right products and services, adapting, evolving as we're kind of going through this. So the strategy is that be even more connected, communicate even more tightly with our customers, and be prepared to change the way that you do what you're doing to meet the needs of them when they're dealing with, you know, increased costs or uncertainty or whatever it might be. And I think that flexibility, you know, is better for you, better for them, but it also builds a stronger relationship long term.
And in terms of that relationship building, how important is that for your sales team to be constantly working on the relationships that they have with their clients?
To me, it's critical. I think, again, anything that's going to move you from transactions to experiences, from transactions to relationships, to me, is critical. And so for your teams, great salespeople actually are really good at relationships. You know, I think a relationship building with customers, I don't know what their personal relationships are like, but their customer relationships are good. And if you work with a great salesperson, you trust them, you'll buy from them, you'll go back for advice, you'll know that you're not just a number. And I think that great salespeople naturally build great relationships. They get it. They're interested. They ask better questions. You know, they solve problems. They're empathetic. They understand what their customers want, and they play a longer term game. It's not just about making money today. It's about life of the customer and what they need over the space of, you know, of a lifetime. It's like my barista doesn't try and sell me 25 cups of coffee today, but he wants to keep me for the next 25 years as a customer.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of mentality.
Yeah. So what about KPIs? Should we be measuring KPIs for our sales?
I think
stuff?
so. Yeah. And I think KPIs, again, look, there's a range. Depends how serious you want to get about it. I mean, for starters, some of the KPIs are obviously gross sales, like what are you selling? But you've got to break that down a little bit too into what are you selling? Now, if you don't know which of your items are profitable and which ones are less profitable, so you've got 3 items that you're selling, for example, and one of those is where you're making most of your profit from, but you're not selling many of them, that's where you need to redirect your sales strategy or thinking. So again, we've got to understand where we make our money. So we've got to understand that. We've got to know how much money we need to make. So having sales targets, if you've got a team, you know, making sure that you've got your, you know, this is what our targets are, this is what we're doing, and staying on top of that is critically important. A third thing is also the cost of our kind of goods, and this is a little bit different to the front end, but what was profitable may no longer be profitable. And that's an interesting point in the last 12 months when the cost of things have gone up so dramatically. I've seen quite a few of my clients who have had products that they thought were their hero products in terms of profitability. When they actually do the numbers, they're not. You know, in fact, they're the least profitable, but no one sat down and really did the numbers. And when they do the numbers, it's like, we're pushing this because it's the most profitable, yet it's no longer the most profitable. We're actually almost losing money on that. You know, so times, particularly like now, when it is, you know, there's a lot going on, you've got to be so across your numbers. And for me, that's on a daily basis. I want to know if I'm making money today, not on the 15th of July, after my tax returns are done. Every single day, I want to know if I'm making money or losing money. And I think that's the extent that every small business needs to be operating at. Got to be so across our dollars and cents that you know. Now, you know, you have enough days where you go, not making money today, not making money today, not making money today. You do something about it. If you don't know, then all of a sudden you just see that the bank account is empty. You go, well, okay, that's problematic. You know, why? What's going on? This way you can be more reactive and proactive, but also get others involved.
And what about marketing? Obviously, we can't really talk about sales without talking about marketing. And I know we're almost out of time, but what should businesses be measuring when they're trying to work out their return on investment? If, say, they've bought social advertising, or what are the kind of key metrics they should be?
It's such a big topic, that one too, right? For me,
sorry.
No, that's okay. The things that I look for with that are some of the basics, which are, you know, increased traffic flow, increased the right traffic flow. You know, that's one thing, but does that traffic flow convert? You know, so what's coming through in terms of leads? Are the leads the right kind of person? So we've got to kind of follow that all the way through and say, well, okay, do the people then buy? If they do buy, what do they buy? You know, so just measuring one element is probably not enough, and it depends on your business. But if you got 10 leads and they're all buying a $10,000 product and it's cost you $1,000, well, that's pretty good. You'd be pretty happy with that. So again, it's a little bit about understanding those numbers. But I also kind of like to go a little bit further and say, well, what is the lifetime value of your customers? What's the average sale of your customers? Start to look at some of those numbers a little bit. Because if we should be able to tell, if I own a coffee shop and my average customer spends $1,500 a year with me on average, well, that's really valuable information to kind of know, you know, like, and then we can kind of break that down a little bit more as well. So whatever KPIs can give us specific data that then we can do something with. We need to do more of that.
Yeah.
This tells us to do less of that. This tells us that we should spend more money on that. That to me is of value. If it's data that I go, oh, that's kind of nice, but what do I do with that? It doesn't help me do more or do less of something. It's not really that valuable, the data. And that's how I kind of advise people to do that. Have we got enough information in front of us that's now going to drive our strategy or drive our activity? We've got all these people that have bought the end product. Okay, we've got 100 people that have bought our end product, but we've got no new product. So our product architecture, you know, means right away, well, they're going to go somewhere else to buy whatever the next part is. So we've got to come up with something new. So data can be really helpful for product development, where to spend, what to do, all those kind of things.
Yeah, so measure everything you can that is going to lead to some kind of action.
Exactly.
But anything that's not really, just that's by the by, forget about it.
To me, it's kind of like, it's just, you know, yeah, it's...
Anything that will help you know your customer better and help you strategize. Yeah. Thank you, Andrew. Great advice.
Pleasure.
I'm afraid that's all we've got time for.
That went quickly, didn't it?
I know.
I know. We had so much more stuff prepared as well.
I know.
We need a 3-day sales-a-thon. A two-parter. Thank you. That's great to chat.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks to Andrew Griffiths for all his fantastic advice. And if you want to find out more about Andrew, you can head to his website at www.andrewgriffiths.com.au and his book, Someone has to be the most expensive. Why not make it you? It's available now at all good bookstores.
And bad bookshops as well.
Bad bookshops too. And of course, if you want to catch up on the latest small business news, expert tips and advice, head to kochiesbusinessbuilders.com.au. And also coming up next week, we have a special masterclass. I'm not hosting this one. It's with the lovely David Koch, and we'll be diving into customer data. If you want to find out how to know more about your customers. So do you really know your customers? Probably not. This masterclass next week is the one for you. So make sure you tune in, same time, 11 a.m. on November 1. Yes, won't be with me though. I know you'll be sad not to see my face. Anyway, thank you. I'm Cec Busby. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.